Welcome everyone to meetup number 162 of the Melbourne AWS user group. For everyone that's here now, if you notice, we have stickers finally from that. So on the table at the back, pick up a sticker if you haven't already got one. Right. The Melbourne AWS user group acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Wurundjeri, Woi-wurrung and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and recognise their ongoing connection to the land. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples either here today or watching on our stream. We operate these events on a code of conduct. The really short version is be nice to each other. Slightly longer version is there, and the full code of conduct is on our website. If you feel that someone isn't abiding by the code of conduct or you feel unsafe at all, please come speak to me, myself or Rob. If you don't want to do so in person, there is an anonymous feedback on the Code of Conduct website. So hopefully no one needs to ever needs to use that. We like to have a nice friendly group here. We are at various places on the web. There's our main website, mel.awsug.org.au. We are on LinkedIn and we're also on YouTube. So if at any stage you can't attend in person, you can jump on that link and watch it live. We stream this. We will also take questions off the stream as well, so feel free to do that. And you can also watch back later. So our agenda for the evening, the introductions, which we're just going through right now. I'll then go through a what's new section of new things in the last month from AWS. We'll then have two talks. This time, tonight, you may have seen the CIVO banner out the front. Both of our speakers are from CIVO, who are one of our sponsors. So we're having a little bit of a CIVO night tonight as a way of saying thank you for all their support over the years. So we have Melinda will be talking first up around Agent Core, and then Gokul will follow that up talking about Control Tower. And then we finish up with the marketplace. So for anyone that's not been here before, we usually ask people if they are hiring rather than people looking for a job, because if your boss is watching the live stream, you might have an interesting conversation on Thursday morning. And then we try and close up around about 8 o'clock. So, as we said, for anyone that's watching this on the stream, you can ask questions either in the YouTube chat or on the hashtag Melbourne channel in our Slack. So, I said a bit earlier about our sponsors. Our gold sponsor is Mantel Group. CIVO is our silver sponsor. And we wouldn't be in this venue without the support of NAB providing this room, so our venue sponsor NAB. I mentioned before about the Slack channel if you're watching on the stream, but you can jump on at any stage. We have various channels there, so feel free, have a look at the link and sign up to our Slack. if you want to get involved, we have a few options. One of the most important ones is speakers. If you've got something that you would like to talk about, jump on to our website and there'll be a link for submitting a talk. We can't put these events on without speakers, and we're also very open to first-time speakers and options to do lightning talks if you don't have a full presentation that you want to do. We are also open for sponsors. Come speak to myself or Matt when he's here. You can jump on and talk to us on the Slack channel as well. And if you would like to help out, we're also open for volunteers, sort of help in the events as we run them. Nicely set out today, but sometimes we need help just getting the room set up for the talks and putting things back afterwards. So come and speak to myself or Rob if you're interested in volunteering. We're not the only gig in town. Big one that's coming up at the end of the year is reInvent. That's in end of November, start of December in Las Vegas. It's AWS's big conference. If you've never had a chance to go there and you get a chance, highly recommend it. It's an amazing week. Full on, about 60,000 people across like 5 or 6 different casinos. It's massive, it's nuts, amazing time. If you don't want to go all the way to America and spend $2,500 on a ticket, that's the ticket for reInvent. Much closer to home is AWS Community Day Australia. Similar to this event, it's being put on by community members. So it's run by community members for the community. It's in Brisbane. Tickets are $20. So very cheap, and it's on a Friday, so you can take a weekend. You know, you can convince your other half to go up to sunny Queensland for a nice long weekend, and it's a good day. A lot closer to home, there are a couple of other events that are coming up in the AWS offices. The well-architected user group is on the 23rd of September. And that's the only other one for this time of year. All right, so next section is the what's new. And let me grab out my notes for this. All right, so finally in Melbourne, we have the RDS for SQL Server support for Developer Edition, the bring your own license for RDS for SQL Server. Blue Schema Registry is in Melbourne now, and there are new 8GD instances in Melbourne. I think mainly in Melbourne it's just the M class that's in here. And in Sydney, you may have heard some talks about Lambda micro VMs. They're available in Sydney now. All right, so what other things are announced regionally or generally? EKS containers, there's a fair bit of EKS announcements in the last month. So now supporting advanced Kubernetes control plane configuration parameters. So giving you some more fine-grained control, more config options for your EKS. Certificate authority rotation is now available with automated lifecycle management. If you're using Argo CD, EKS now supports the Argo CD custom configurations with the Argo CM config maps. EKS now supports multiple external OICD identity providers per cluster. So if you need to do things with a couple of different providers, you now have that option. And if you're running ECS, that now automatically detects and repairs container instances. So basically checks for the agent on there. If you've got a impaired agent connectivity, it'll now automatically try and detect and repair those. Machine learning. Agent core runtime instances are now generally available. So if you're wanting to run your own sort of agent core effectively on sort of AWS managed EC2s, that's now available. Lambda console extends the IDE integrations to Kiro and Cursor. So if you're running your Lambdas, there's an option there to sort of click the button and send that through to your local IDE. So Kiro and Cursor now supported. Bedrock expanding IAM principal cost allocation. So this one will let you utilize IAM principles for like bill back and stuff like that. So you can have a look at those. Agent core payments now generally available. Security agent now supports budget controls. So security agent's the new thing which will go out and do like pen testing and things like that. You can now set budget controls, so stop it after a certain time, so it's not going to do up your costs. And Agent Core Memory now supports extracting memories from non-conversational JSON. So if you've got other payloads there, you can extract that info from non-conversational payloads. In serverless, Lambda now has a massive jump in scalable network bandwidth, so up to 300 megabits per second for functions outside of a VPC. So if you've got very large payloads you need to do stuff with, you've got a lot more bandwidth to do that. And Lambda functions now support full IAM resource-based policies. So with those, now you can have like condition keys in your Lambda policies, so you don't have to have the full principles in there. Security, there was a lot in security. So Identity Center now makes management of your account access optional. So I'm not sure how many people would actually utilize this, but if you're only using applications for your Identity Center, you can now do that. You don't have to have Identity Center controlling your accounts as well. So it's probably a relatively niche thing, but you can do that. Identity Center also supports one-click multi-region. So relatively new that you can now have multiple regions for your Identity Center, sort of a backup region. That was a little bit difficult to configure and deploy. Now, if you're doing it for a new organization, there's a one-click button to allow you to set up your Identity Center across multiple regions. Because yeah, that's one of those things where although IAM is sort of global, if you ignore the fact that it's running out of US East 1, Identity Center runs in a single region, and if the region goes down, you can't log in. So now you can set up a second region for that, much easier with the one click. Secrets Manager, adding external secret support for Jenkins and SonarQube. IAM now provides Role Manager to set up roles automatically. Certificate Manager now supports switching your email to DNS validation. So this is also probably a key one because I think September next year, they're actually stopping email validation entirely. So this will be an easy way to switch that across to your DNS validation. This is a sort of interesting one. reInvent last year, AWS announced Policy Autopilot. So it's an open source tool to help generate your IAM policies from your workloads. Now it supports Terraform plan files. So if you have a Terraform plan, you can use that as an import to the Policy Autopilot, and it will come out and tell you like what the most optimal IAM policies are for the resources in your plan. And finally, network firewall supporting stateful rule hit counts. So you can now manage, or you can now graph the hit counts for your stateful rules. DevOps, AWS backup for Amazon S3 now supports direct access. So basically this is setting up S3 access points to your backups so you can access them without having to do a restore, which is sort of interesting. EC2 introducing application status checks. So probably aware EC2 currently has checks for if the infrastructure is having issues or if basically you blue screen and you can't talk to things. You can now set up application checks. So put in a port and a path and protocol type, and it will check and see if that goes down, and it will raise a check, an alarm for you. What else? CloudFront supports origin access control for S3 multi-region access points now. So before you had to do a lot of tricky stuff, maybe use Landred Edge to sort of manage all that if you had multi-region S3 access points. AWS CloudFront now supports that natively, so a lot easier if you're doing that sort of stuff. And SQL Server now supports pushing the audit logs to CloudWatch, which is nice if you're running RDS SQL Server. And finally, the last couple of points, AWS now introduces Context Ontology Accelerator. I had a look at that and I don't really understand what that is. So if you understand what it is, probably something for you and you will be happy about this. If you don't, like me, then yeah, next topic. Which is probably more useful to a lot of people is Glue now delivers about a 30% price reduction, and it has Iceberg v3 support. So if you're doing a lot of stuff with Glue, probably and Iceberg, that's now a lot cheaper and has the version 3 support. And finally, there's another good thing for a lot of people, reduced pricing for GPT 5.6 Sol. So if you're using that with Bedrock, it's cheaper now. All right, and that wraps up the What's New section. So we will now jump and welcome our first speaker, Melinda.
hear me? Good.
I'll do the intro.
Ah, okay.
All right. Just a quick intro. So, Melinda is a principal engineer at Civo with over 20 years of experience in software delivery, specializing in cloud native application design, SRE, and DevOps. He holds 4 AWS certs, including the SA Pro, and has a growing focus in applying AI to real world business challenges. Probably hence his Agent Core talk tonight. All right. Thanks, Melinda.
Right. Thanks, Jason. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, my name is Malinda. I'm a principal consultant at Civo. Have some experience with Agent Core, obviously pushing them into production. So I thought maybe I should share my knowledge. The pains, burned fingers with the Melbourne AWS user group. And I'm also AWS community builder. So if anyone is not a community builder, feel free to join us. You can contribute in many ways over there, and it's a good platform to learn, and I'm benefiting. And obviously you can see from my jacket that there are other benefits too. Right. So today we are going to talk about Bedrock Agent Core, but just to set the scene, this is not a tutorial of Agent Core, and this is not an introduction to Agent Core. So I really want to get a gauge to understand how many of you are familiar, have heard of Agent Core. Lots of hands. How many of you have worked or implemented something with Agent Core? Some hands. How many of you have pushed your code to production? Right. Okay. All right. Thanks. Now, I understand that this is not really an introduction to Agent Core, but given the audience, I'll spend some time explaining what is Agent Core so that you have some context into the pitfalls and best practices that I'm talking about. Otherwise, you will go, what the hell? What is he talking about? We don't understand anything, right? So Agent Core essentially is a managed AWS platform doing all the heavy lifting for you to deploy your agentic applications into production. With that, before we jump into all the technologies and platforms and AWS, we need to understand what is an agent and what is an agentic loop. So in this diagram, I have introduced this because without this, you really don't understand why Agent Core platform exists. Usually with an agent, you have an input. It could be, think of it like a chatbot, right? Your question to that chatbot is the input, and you are expecting some sort of output. Inside the agent, there is a loop running. So agent observe, for example, if we have an input, it observes that input and it perceives it, understands it, and then it reason about it and act on it. And this goes until it achieves its goal. Apart from that agentic loop, there are a bunch of configurations. I have listed only few. Agent has access to some tools. In order to achieve that goal, it may need to browse a website, access a data store. So all these are we call tools. That's part of agent's configuration. And it has a system prompt which defines what that agent is based on your instructions. And in order to persist the state, etc., it has its own memory. There are a lot of other things, but in order for an agent to run, you need this agentic loop in an execution environment plus all these configurations, right? It's very easy these days to build an agent. You can do it in your lunchtime. There are so many frameworks out there. You can download whatever the SDK you want. You can build it. You can have your own agent to play with. But getting it into production is a completely different story, right? There are so many parameters that you need to think of, like scalability. Earlier it was was only you who is using this tool or the agentic application. But now there are 1,000 concurrent users going to use this. What are the security and safety mechanisms? Can there be some prompt injections? Can your agent, because now you have used this agent to access your data stores, it was earlier only you use your account to access these data stores. But what if another user trying to access these data? How do you limit that? And also, agents are non-deterministic. This is the fun part. Earlier, I used to do a lot of programming with like APIs, backend systems. It wasn't fun because you know what they are going to produce unless there is a bug or data change. But you change nothing and your output change with agents, right? It's non-deterministic. So how do you test this, right? These are the challenges, these are the production gaps that you need to address. And the other funny thing is that once you deploy to production, because a drift in the model, all of a sudden your responses are going to get changed. How do you manage that? How do you observe that change? So these are the challenges that you face in production. So we call this the production gap. This is why AWS came up with Agent Core as a platform, as an execution environment, solving some problems specific to agents. They had their own execution environments. They had Lambdas, Fargate, ECS, EC2. They had their own persistence stores like RDS, DynamoDB, even S3. But they want to solve it in a different way so that you can easily deploy applications into production. So that's why Agent Core exists. So in this diagram, I have shown different layers of when your application run, what are the different layers that you have to interact with. So your application is on the top, immediately interact with agent framework, something like Strands or Crew AI, right? You download a Strands SDK, you write your application using Strands. The Agent Core is the runtime that can execute all these agentic framework. Now, Agent Core is not limited to a single framework. Obviously, I have seen like Strands is the popular option, but you can run Langcraft, Crew AI, etc. So Agent Core layer handles all the runtime, memory, identity, the gateway that is access to different systems, and underneath there are foundation models for the inferences like Cloud model, Nova, Mistral, etc. Right? So it's very important to understand where Agent Core fits in your in this bigger picture, and why it is important to understand why you should Agent Core instead of trying to solve these problems by yourself. So let's say that you don't have Agent. How do you solve this problem? How do you bring your workloads into production? Obviously, you can use a Lambda. You can write your Lambda interacting with a Bedrock model, and all the requests are transmitted to Bedrock model, and you get a response and you return a response back. But then you have to solve a lot of other problems. How do you persist state? Yes, you can get a DynamoDB. That's another wire going out. How do you manage the secrets? How do you manage the access to those data sources? Yes, you can get secret manager, store all your API keys in there. But then about identity, how do you handle the identity? Yes, you have Cognito or UIDP, you can hook that in and manually. And then you can have Amazon CloudWatch to monitor, get all the logs and monitor. And if you want to evaluate how your agent behaves, then you have to write something on top of your logs to find how this agent behave, maybe like some sort of a dashboard. But this is so much work. You don't want to do this. If you try to do this, it will take weeks to ship something into production. You can't do it quickly. That's why Agent Core versus, I call it DIY Lambda. do-it-yourself Lambda or DIY Fargate, EC2, whatever you want. That's where the difference, that's where the value comes in. And also we need to be mindful of the limitations. For example, some of your agents may need to run more than 15 minutes, so your Lambda terminates within 15 minutes. But Amazon Bedrock Agent Core can run up to 8 hours continuously. And also the micro VM architecture that Agent Core brings isolate or the different tenants, users of different tenants, isolate the execution environment. And also it has a long-term and short-term memory to persist your state. And one of the biggest benefits, when I learned about Agent Core, what attracted me most is its gateway, right? Let's say that you have 3 agents running and you need to access 5 backend services. Managing all these connections is 3 times 5, 15, right? We call it M by N problem. You have M app clients accessing N backend service, and if you don't have the power of gateway, it's very difficult problem to manage. But now what you do is you define it in your gateways, and these are the 5 tools or 5 backend services I need to access, and then your agentic applications can dynamically discover because everything is MCPified by the gateway. Also the evaluations built in it, Agent Core, you don't have to worry about having your own dashboard on top of logs. And other biggest advantage is identity. Unfortunately, my picture cuts off, but I can read it. Identity is native and it handles both inbound connections and outbound connections. I'll dive into that a little bit later in the slides, but this list goes on, right? So these are some of the advantages that Agent Core brings into you. So it's a no-brainer to use Agent Core. What are the main building blocks? So if you are not familiar with Agent Core, these are the main building blocks. There are few others like policy, etc., but they usually supplement some of these. The runtime is obviously where your workloads run, gateway, how you access and integrate with other services. Memory is how you persist your state. Identity and policy determine how your access control, inbound and outbound. And then there are a bunch of managed tools available, and observability and evaluation ensure that you have enough information to ensure that the agent behaves correctly or as intended, and you can easily find the drift. So this is the blueprint that ties everything together that I described. But you don't have to go through everything. So these are the building blocks and how they ties together. And at the top you have agent frameworks like, for example, Strands agents, and you can have Agent Core SDK and start a toolkit. You bake your application as an image, push into ECR or whatever the registry are out there, and then Agent Core runtime can pull and deploy. So that's a very simple architecture. If you haven't done that, I would highly recommend following this. And underneath you have all the building blocks of Agent Core, and logs and open telemetry are available in the observability plateau, and then the models are available for the Agent Core runtime to use. Right. This is the same thing, but more practical images. I think some icons that you are familiar with, just to show you how everything ties together. Right. Again, unfortunately, you can't see the right-hand side of the screen, I believe, that shows the tools and the backend systems. But essentially the same description I described earlier. Right. Bit conscious of the time, so let's move into the pitfalls. So there are some funny experiences we had when we deploy applications, or especially when we demo these applications to our stakeholders. So some of these are my experiences, some of these are not. And I'm also building a orchestration framework on top of Agent Core. So I'm experimenting with Agent Core a lot. So there are 20 odd little repos in my laptop. Experimenting with Agent Core is my sort of hobby these days. So I thought maybe I should share some of these pitfalls. And the other thing is that these pitfalls are not only for Agent Core, it's generally applicable for like when you're building agentic applications. So you can reuse them elsewhere as well. Cool. Pitfall number 1. This is something I personally did. Is when we, so in this example on the right hand side, you can see I was using strands as well because I'm using strands by default. You can see that a tool you can write, for example, when you are writing your API backends, you can use whatever the function that you want, function name you want. But with Agent Core, if you use the tool descriptions and tool names vaguely, it can lead to some sort of routing and selection problem. Let's say that your agent has access to 20 or 30 tools out there, and if you don't name them and give like a sufficient description, your agent will struggle to find the correct tool. One, it can use the wrong tool, or it will take too much time, and as we know, agents, they hallucinate and they will come up with solution confidence, say this is your answer, right? So naming your tools is very important because that is a governing factor for routing and selection mechanism in agent, right? So there are a number of best practices. In the below I have shown those best practices. You sometimes have to say what is this tool is not about, because you observe that it's trying to use this tool, and then you add a statement saying this tool is not specifically for this one, and there is another tool. So that's a classic example we face. And also the boundary language, which defines the boundary of the tool. Another experience that I had is that if you say the schema and strict about it, most of the time the agents pick the right tool, because it understands, okay, now you need a tool that gives you sort of like integer with a screen ID integer in there in this example, and then it can find the tool, the specific tool, if you have like two different candidate tools. Remember that agents pick these tools dynamically. Okay, so that's why the problem is. Earlier, when you have APIs, backends, your handler knows exactly which library or which module to use. Not the case with agents. You just say, here are a bunch of tools, you figure it out, right? Pitfall number 2, conversational ping pong. Maybe you have seen this, and this is an embarrassing experience for us when we demo it to one of our stakeholders. The agent asks so many questions, right? When you give an answer, it asks another question. When you give an answer, it asks another. So how do we avoid this? The system prompt. System prompt is very important. You have to specifically say in your system prompt what are the dimensions. For example, let's say you are converting a form, a digital form, to sort of like a chatbot. In that form, you may already have different options. So rather than just giving the question as an instruction to the agent, you have to say what are the available options for the user to pick from, right? And the data types, etc. So this will restrict the number of times the agent is trying to go back and forth with the user to collect the information. That's another pitfall. And also you have to enforce strict input validation patterns. For example, when user enters something incorrectly, it figure out and then it adapt. So there are a number of best practices for this. Another common mistake, people try, especially software engineers, when they write a POC, they don't worry about observability. It runs in my machine, it's perfect. Let's ship it, right? And then in the production, Observability. Now we need observability. But observability is not an afterthought when it comes to agentic system, right? Your API, your standalone application running somewhere, maybe observability is an afterthought, but not for agentic. Mainly because of the non-deterministic nature of agents. You need to know exactly how agents work, how they perform the handovers, especially with multi-agent agentic systems, right? One agent can finish task and hand it over to another agent and continue, right? So there are different orchestration patterns for agents. When this handover happens, you need to know exactly what's been handed over, where the problem comes in. Mainly because agents are so notorious, they are confident liars, like, they can lie it with, like, saying that, okay, this is the answer, right? But you need to understand you need to understand whether that's the correct answer, where the problem came in, and all these little handovers between agents you need to observe. Another important, so how do we overcome this is, there are a number of best practices. You need to have like a global tracing context across running all these conversations, all these handovers. And also there are wrap every LLM provider called an automated telemetry wrapper. So there are open telemetry wrappers that are available in Agent Core that you can use for this purpose. So there are a number of best practices. The other pitfall is timeouts. Your agents can run can have like long running tasks, but if you haven't specified that your parameters correctly, from memory after about 15 minutes, I could be wrong. If there is no response, there are no interactions, your micro VM provision can shut down, right? So you have to be careful, keep it active. We call it keeping it healthy busy. So there is a ping that should come from your application to this orchestrator, saying to make it stay healthy busy, and then when the actual response came, you can complete that loop and hand it over to the calling application. Few examples are like, when your agent is actually doing maybe like mass DB updates, and sometimes the agent could wait for a human in the loop to do approval because of the workflow requires some sort of a human approval, and that can take some time. And also there is MCP tasks that you can use. It is more like call now, fetch later. So you make the call, but you don't wait to exit, and then you go back and fetch when there is a response. Right, I'm going a little bit fast because there are so many pitfalls I need to talk about, but I'll leave you some time at the end to ask questions. Another common mistake is neglecting early memory governance. You can completely forget about using long-term memory, short-term memory in Agent Core, and just do whatever you want with the application. But when it comes to production systems, and once you keep it, it's so hard to alter all these later. So you need to think, plan ahead. How you handle the persistent state, use the appropriate mechanism to handle it, and also defining correct data boundaries and context scope policies before you deploy into production. So these are the things, probably maybe not in the POC stage, but once you decide that this POC needs to be in production, that's the stage you need to critically evaluate whether you have done the correct design when it comes to handling the memory governance. One of the things that you can easily do is isolation. That's a security concern as well. Isolate multi-tenant sessions. For example, let's say that you have a user ID coming from the token. You can just bring it across. That way, all your executions are isolated, and it runs through the complete workflow. And the version memory schemas and using model agnostic formats, that's important too. Why? Because then you can easily change the model. Let's say that you are using Llama and now you need to update to some, like it's a GPT, and using model agnostic schema to exchange is important, because that will not affect your application. Right. This is a security concern as well, using agents in God mode, right? When you write your first application with agents, yes, it runs on your machine, so it's the only agent, and it has all the access to everything, so that it's easy for you. And you don't really care about, like, least privilege access. So in this issue, what happens is people usually grant broad administrative level privilege because it's easy thing to do. But you have to remember, when multiple users are accessing, your agents work on behalf of those users as well, right? And one of the things I found is a lack of understanding of what is the workload identity in agent core platform. So a workload identity is a digital identity for your AI agent, whether it's in the runtime environment, memory, etc. That digital identity is carried forward. It's not an IAM role, just like, when you work with AWS systems, usually IAM role gets assigned, and that role has the privileges. It is not a static IAM role. It is an IAM role, but think of it like a temporary token, temporary privilege given to an agent based on two scopes. One is who is accessing this agent, some user, and whether this agent has access to that system. I'll explain that little in deep here because it's very important to understand it. Let's say that you have an application, and that application is used by a user, and your agent is in the middle, and that user needs to access maybe data stores or some sort of tools out there, right? So when this is required, what happens is, this agent, what defines this agent is not only defined by that agent's access to those tools, but also the inbound auth as well, right? So two conditions need to be satisfied. The user who is calling this agent needs to have access to that agent. That's number one. Number two is that agent needs to have access to that particular service or a tool, right? So this is what we call dual scope, and there are a bunch of best practices I have listed. Go and read. Very important to understand this concept of that dual scope binding, and this is a cryptographic binding done within agent core framework. You don't have to worry about it. All you need to do is point to IDP saying this is how I obtain tokens for users and exchange tokens, and agent core will dynamically do that for you, right? So it will generate a new token every time when tool is accessing a resource. Sorry, agent is accessing a tool or a resource. This is an easy one, so I'll just skip. You have single agent with many responsibilities, just like your job. You have too many responsibilities, right? There's a security vulnerability as well, and it needs to be delegated in a multi-agent system. Silent hallucination, again, obvious, something obvious. Agent can successfully complete, right? They are always successful, but they will completely ignore your instructions because there was some sort of error underneath, and it hides and presents the result. God knows how it came up with, but that's why it's very important to understand agent core insights and have like quality scores, etc. There are best practices like semantic caching. For example, if you have like repetitive queries, you can have semantic caching so that you don't have to go and get that answer again. You can use the cache. All right, I'm glad that I could finish. There are so many pitfalls. I removed about 6 slides out of this with the worry that I will run over time. Not sure whether we have time for questions.
We've got time for a couple of questions, yeah. One down the back here.
Thank you. Great presentation today, Melinda.
Yep.
My question is there a feature in Agent Core which helps you detect if your agent is running in a degraded state or is not performing optimally? Is it something you have to implement on your own, or is it a feature that you can leverage? Thank you.
Yes, it's called evaluations in Agent Core. So observability and evaluation, they are considered two different features, but they go hand in hand, right? You can use Agent Core observability. It publishes all your behaviors. There are ways you can control what you want to see as well. I can't tell from memory, but there are so many parameters. For example, truthfulness and things like that, you can monitor dynamically. And it's built-in support. You don't have to do anything. You just need to turn them on. Thanks.
So your agent core agents are running inside EKS, right?
No, Agent Core has its own runtime.
Okay.
And it's running in micro VMs.
Okay. How are you assigning the workload identity?
You don't have to. That's the beauty of it.
Okay.
What you need to say is how to resolve your identity of the calling user. For example, you can point to your Entra or Cognito, whatever the IDP, and Agent Core will determine it magically. There is a cryptographic process. It identifies, let's say that you are accessing. It identifies, okay, let's say John is accessing. Can John access this? Good, based on the IDP, and then it also identifies John is trying to access tool X. Can this tool X access by this agent? Good, then only you can access.
Okay. How the agent is authenticating and authorization happens? Like how the agent is authenticating itself, and how are the authorization tokens are being passed to the agent?
So that's also defined within Agent Core. There is a policy framework as well that you can use to restrict. And agents are using these temporary tokens that they obtain based on the user access plus agents policies, and then use the temporary token to access the resources. There are multiple ways you can do this. It depends on your application. But that's there is there are a bunch of recommendations out there. I can send you some articles to go and read, because Agent Core identity is a big topic. We can give like a presentation alone only on that.
Short,
Yes, we're gonna. Sorry, we're just gonna. For time reasons, we'll just leave it there.
We'll catch up after.
Afterwards. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Alrighty. And now we come to our second speaker, Gokul. He's no stranger to anyone that's been here a few times. Gokul is a seasoned software engineer with 15 plus years of experience. He's passionate about continuous learning and developing deep expertise in cloud technologies to help his customers maximize the benefits of cloud, reduce costs, and achieve optimal results. And today he's here to talk to us about Control Tower. Take it away, Gokul.
Thank you, Jason. Can you guys hear me? Cool. Thank you. So I recently did a migration project for a large enterprise customer who I cannot name, but I wanted to cover my learnings while we did it and my experience through the migration journey. So we migrated AWS organization to Control Tower to improve the cloud security and governance update for the customer. I'm Gokul, principal consultant from, a little bit louder. Good. My name is Gokul. I'm a principal consultant from CIVO. I'm also an AWS community builder. Yeah. It's 2026, right? So if you are currently using a single AWS account to host multiple environments, I think it may be the right time to revisit your AWS architecture. The reason I say this is because multi-account strategy. So what is multi-account strategy? When you use multiple AWS accounts to host your workloads and you segregate the workloads to different accounts depending on your application or environment or business units or security or access requirement for any other reasons. And when using multi-account strategy, you get different key benefits. Few benefits are improved security, environment isolation, reduced blast radius, really important one, and simplified access control. So with all this, you can safely innovate and create and deliver value to your customers, and your team can continuously evolve throughout the process. Though multi-account strategy provides all these benefits, it is really difficult to manage a multi-account environment without centralized capabilities. What happens if we try to do that? You will create, one, it drastically increases the operational overhead, and two, there are chances that we may have inconsistent baselines across different accounts. So that issues is solved by a service called AWS Organizations. So AWS Organization was introduced by AWS on 2017 to simplify the multi-account management and governance. AWS Organization follows the hierarchical OU model, which is this. So you can have a root OU, and you can have multiple child OUs under root, and you can have further child OUs under one child OUs, and you can have multiple AWS accounts underneath each of these OUs. AWS Organization provides multiple features like centralized identity. So you just have to connect your IDP only once, identity provider, and you can use it to access all your AWS environment. You can have service control policies, consolidated billing. You don't have to provide your billing information or billing details to all the single AWS accounts. You just have to do it once, and all the bills will be consolidated and get billed once in a month. Centralized logging and security. You don't have to build separate logging or security to all the different AWS accounts. You can just centralize everything into one. Resource sharing. There are a few AWS services that can be shared between different accounts. You can just create in one account and share between other accounts within the AWS organization. And account management and delegated administrators and management account and whatnot. So these are the few, but AWS Organization still provides a little bit more than this. What is Control Tower? So AWS Organization provides you everything. The only key difference is you can use the service, but you still have to do a lot of these stuff yourself manually. For example, service control policies. So you can have an AWS organization, but if you want a strict, tighter control, then you'll have to write your own bunch of SAP documents and attach it to different OUs and AWS accounts so that you can get the tighter control. This is actually solved by, or AWS Control Tower actually solves this problem. AWS Control Tower was introduced in 2019, couple of years later after the introduction of AWS Organization, and I think there is an important point that's being hidden there. But if you look at this graph, this is the cloud adoption graph between 2016 to 2019, and the cloud adoption has increased like almost 150% between these 2 years. What this means is there are a lot of customers who could have started their multi-cloud strategy with AWS organizations, but they may not have moved to Control Tower completely, because at times it might seem a bit risky to move a completely established environment to a Control Tower. Control Tower is actually built on top of AWS organization, and it provides an automated way to establish and govern a multi-account environment. It does it using a process called controls. There are 3 types of controls that Control Tower offers: mandatory controls, strongly recommended controls, and elective controls. We will deep dive into these controls a little bit later. If you have an existing AWS organization, you can move it to Control Tower, and you can start implementing governance on the AWS organizations. The key benefit of using Control Towers are control catalogs. Control Tower provides a pre-packaged bunch of controls. Currently, there are around 1,600 plus controls that you can take advantage of, so you can just directly apply those controls on the OUs. Govern regions and deny region, this is my favorite thing. So when you start using Control Tower, let's say if you have a customer and your customer is mostly deploying workloads on Signy region, and if you just want to block all other regions, you can just choose deny region. Basically, Control Tower goes and applies an SCP and just blocks all the other regions, so that you have a very strict control that all the users can only deploy resources for the Signy region. And the last thing is the account factory. This is one of the key benefits of the Control Tower. With AWS organization, yes, you can deploy a lot of controls on the organization, but account factory is one of the key features that differentiates Control Tower from organization. So you can create accounts using account factory, and the account factory helps you to create a certain baseline on the accounts on all the new accounts that you're creating. Control Tower offers 3 different types of controls. The first one is preventive, the second one is detective, the third one is proactive. Preventive controls are the type of controls that will prevent non-compliant actions before they occurring, and it's been achieved with 3 different types: SCP, RCP, and declarative policies. Currently, there is a limitation on SCP that OU can have only 10 SCP documents attached to it, and each SCP document can have only 10,240 characters. It used to be 5 SCP and 5 120 character before. AWS has just doubled this very recently. The next one is the detective control. Detective control detects non-compliance after deployment, and it's primarily achieved using config rules and AWS Security Hub. It displays the non-compliant resource on the Control Tower dashboard. Currently, there are 1,350 detective controls. The last one is the proactive controls. Very similar to preventive controls. Proactive controls also blocks the non-compliant resources before deployment, but the only catch is it only works using CloudFormation hooks. What it means is if you're trying to create resource using CloudFormation or CDK or SAM, it can catch that. But if you're using any other IAC tools like Terraform or Pulumi, or even if you're doing it using ClickOps, it will not monitor those resources. So at this point, Control Tower only lets customers to use the pre-packaged controls that the Control Tower offers. If you have any other custom requirements on top of what Control Tower offers, you can always build your own SCP documents and deploy it using AWS organizational APIs. Is Control Tower the only option to manage a multi-account environment? Actually, no. So there are other options available for managing a multi-account environment. So the high level is, do you want a managed landing zone? Landing zone is a multi-account environment structure. Do you want a managed option or a custom landing zone? If you are going down with a managed option, then Control Tower is the only option offered. But if we want to go with a custom landing zone, then we can achieve it through IAC, or we can have AWS organizations and custom frameworks built around it with which we can achieve the same result. And choosing an option really depends on the existing AWS architecture, the team skills, compliance requirement, and the level of customization and the maturity of the system. So these are the different options available currently. The first one is the custom landing zone. I'm going to explain a customer use case, and customer was currently using the custom landing zone where they have AWS organization and they were using Terraform to deploy controls on top of the AWS organization, and they had custom account vending and baselining with which they were creating accounts and baselining the accounts to a certain security standard. The second option is AWS organization plus LZA or landing zone accelerator. Landing zone accelerator is a beast. It's a really big, complex, customized solution, mostly used for highly regulated environments. The third option is Control Tower. Control Tower comes with few flavors. You can use Control Tower plus AFC or AFT or CFCT or Control Tower with LGA. The first three or the first three that I've mentioned are used for account vending process. When I go to the account vending slides, I can cover them in detail. The last option is Control Tower plus LGA. That's a combination of two powerful solutions, and the recommendation is to only use them for a highly regulated environment because it comes with its own operational overhead of managing stuff and whatnot. Control Tower enablement and migration. So Control Tower can be deployed for both greenfield and brownfield customers. Control Tower offers two deployment options. The first one is the full setup. You just deploy the entire Control Tower. It doesn't let you to choose a lot of things. The second one is, for example, if you already have an established AWS environment, you can only cherry pick what you want and you can just deploy that. Option 2 is the preferred option for most customers who already have an existing AWS environment because it provides minimal disruption to the existing landing zone. It doesn't require any redesign to the existing multi-account environment that the customer has, and you can adopt Control Tower capabilities gradually rather than just doing a big bang, because the first option is what the big bang approach, and that's more suitable for customers like, I have an existing organization, I have few accounts, but I just want a very clean new environment and I just want to migrate the workloads from the existing solution to the new solution. Those customers can choose option 1, but if you're trying to adopt Control Tower on your existing solution, then option 2 is the most preferred one. Phased enrollment. So when you're, let's assume you're trying to enable a Control Tower on an existing organization. Once you enable Control Tower, it doesn't mean that Control Tower just goes and manages all the accounts and OUs. Control Tower just gets enabled, and that's a step 1. And the step 2 is you will have to bring your OUs and accounts into the Control Tower, and the process is called registration or enrollment. So once you bring the accounts into the Control Tower, and Control Tower starts governing those accounts from that point. Before enrolling a particular account to the Control Tower does a process called pre-check. The reason is, when you try to enroll an account into a Control Tower creates a bunch of resources into the accounts for the purpose of management, like IAM roles, SNS rules, a CloudWatch, a bucket for CloudTrail, and even bridge rule and whatnot. So what pre-check does is it goes and checks into that account to see, do I have any other resources in this account already that could conflict with what I'm trying to create? If yes, the account enrollment will fail. And once the accounts are enrolled into Control Tower, then Control Tower automatically applies a bunch of rules on the account called mandatory controls. And these mandatory controls are nothing but a set of controls that basically protects the resource the Control Tower created into that particular account. These include protecting the IAM roles and AWS config configurations, CloudWatch group it created, SNS topic it created, and the S3 bucket that it created for the log archive mechanism, and all the other resources that it creates. The last part of the account Control Tower is account vending, and as I mentioned, this is a key differentiator between just using an AWS organization versus using Control Tower. Account vending is a process of creating new accounts into an existing multi-account environment. This new account should be aligned with the customer agreed security and governance baselines. Let's say, for example, if you want an AWS account on which you by default have to disable 10 different things, and you want to deploy 100 IAM roles even before the end user can see the account, that's called account baselining. An account factory or account vending is a process which creates an account, does all those activities before handing over the account to the end user. So let's say we have chosen Control Tower as our solution to manage the multi-account. And with Control Tower, we have few options for the account vending process. The first one is Account Factory. So you can directly use Account Factory API to create accounts, which Account Factory by default will do a bunch of things. Let's say one example is it goes and deletes a default PPC before completing the account creation. So that's one option. The second option is Account Factory for Terraform. If you are a Terraform house or using your users or developers are using Terraform a lot, then this is the most preferred option. You can use Account Factory for Terraform and deploy a customization on top of that. So anytime you just check in a code, it will trigger a pipeline, and it can create an account and does customization on top of that. The third one is customizations for Control Tower, which is CFCT. The next one is Account Factory customizations with blueprints. This is an option which customers use if they are CloudFormation house. There is a significant disadvantage in this. The disadvantage is you can have only one blueprint per account, which means you can have only one copy and you can just create accounts exactly like that. But if you're a really large customer who wants different patterns, then this is not the option that you need to go with. The last option is the custom option, which is you create your own step function, you have your own Lambda functions, and you can do all the customization that you want. This is a really flexible function, flexible option, but it requires the operational overhead of building the step function, building the Lambda, maintaining it, testing it, changing it over time and whatnot. So now I'll talk about the customer experience that I did. So these are the requirements from the customer. The customer was using an existing AWS organization, and they had 10 plus top level OUs, and each of these top level OUs had multiple nested OUs, and they were SCP supplied at OU level and account level. They had more than 200 AWS accounts, and few accounts were created even in 2015, and they wanted to migrate all these accounts to Control Tower. A lot of these accounts had critical applications and workloads running in it, so we couldn't, the Control Tower migration should be so seamless and shouldn't cause an outage to the end user. The customer already had a bunch of security controls deployed. They had around 300 plus SCP policy statements deployed. So migrating this to the Control Tower is also a requirement. The customer was also using custom account vending process. They were using step functions plus Lambda. So the requirement was to move this from the existing custom solution to Account Factory for Terraform. And the last one is they wanted all this migration to Control Tower to happen seamlessly without causing any outage or impact to the end user. So what we did is we did a detailed assessment and we created few frameworks to support the migration process. So we created 4 frameworks. The first one is the pre-check automation. Control Tower does its pre-check, but we built another pre-check on top of that. And what this does is we go and execute this pre-check on the accounts that we are planning to onboard to Control Tower to identify what are the early conflicts that we might see so that we can fix them even before we get into the migration process. The next one is the post-check. This check actually validates, did the Control Tower onboard the account properly? Did it all create all the necessary resources as part of the Control Tower onboarding process? And is my AWS service and application accessible after the Control Tower enrollment? The third one and the interesting one is the CTCM, which is Control Tower Controls Management Framework. So this is the framework with which we deploy the controls to the OU. And the last one is the dedupe framework. So as I was mentioning, Control Tower had a limitation where, not Control Tower, AWS organization had a limitation where you can have only 10 SAP documents and each SAP document has a limit. So we can't go ahead and keep expanding our SAP, so it has to have a limit. So what we were doing is, because customer already had 300 plus SAP statements and Control Tower also comes with bunch of SAP documents, we were trying to identify the duplicates and remove it so that we just have only necessary documents so that we'll not hit the maximum limit. So what we then did is, so we enabled Control Tower for the first time. That's a one-time activity. And we took all the OUs, we did wave planning, and we passed each OU in this process. We do pre-check, we do post-check, and then it passes through the CTCM and it passes through the dedupe. And once all these 4 frameworks are passed, like all the OUs are migrated to the Control Tower. And finally, once all the OUs are migrated, the Control Tower account pending has been migrated from the previous custom solution to the new solution. I just quickly wanted to show how the CTCM looks. It might be smaller in screenshot, but let me see if I can show that. So Control Tower currently has around 69 preventive, 315 detective, and 235 proactive. So each of these controls have a unique identifier called API identifier. What we did is we created a Terraform repository, and it has this behavioral structure called preventive, detective, proactive, and others. And under each behavior, we create a file called resource-name.yaml, and for example, here it's secretmanager.yaml. And what we do is, in this particular file, we provide the unique identifier, and we also provide the target OUs to which this control should target to. And if there are any additional excluded roles, we just also provide that. Control Tower offers this thing called parameterized control, where you can exclude a bunch of roles from this particular control to make sure you can, for example, a break glass role is one good example. You can add this break glass as excluded role so that it will not be restricted by the Control Tower process. So, so what happens is, all the proactive controls, so let's say all the preventive controls related to the secret manager will reside on one single file, and this will be deployed based on the target OUs. These controls will be deployed to all the OUs that we want it to get deployed. So yeah, that's how we migrated the entire organization of an existing workload to Control Tower, and we started managing using Control Tower.
All right, thank you, Gokul. Does anyone have any questions? No? All right, if you do have anything, Gokul will be around afterwards and you can have a chat to him then. But yeah, thanks, Gokul. All right, thanks everyone. And as we're getting towards the end of the night, we will do our traditional marketplace. So again, is there anyone that is hiring? All right, and we have
Another
what's your
Sevon.
role down? Yeah.
Yep, Sevo are hiring a number of roles. You can check our website or LinkedIn to see what they are. And I'll take this quick moment to thank Jason, Rob, Matt at home for allowing Sevo to be sponsors of this event. We love doing it. You can see the team loves talking about AWS. So feel free to interact with us on the socials and LinkedIn, and keep the conversation going. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. And again, thanks very much to Sevo for being a silver sponsor. And not only that, but for everyone that comes along and talks. It's really, really great. Thank you. And that leads on to the thanks for the rest of our sponsors. Our gold sponsor, Mantel. And again, NAB for giving us this venue to hold this. Without that, we'd probably just be in a park somewhere, shivering and cold and not as comfortable. So thanks everyone for turning up. And remember, it is the last Wednesday of every month that we have this, not the 4th. So next month, being a 5 Wednesday month, it is on the 30th of September. So keep an eye out on our LinkedIn and our socials to see who we have as speakers. And hopefully we'll see you all again. Thanks, everyone.